Grain Elevator and Processing Society is hosting their annual GEAPS Exchange Conference at the Kansas City Convention Center, February 22nd through the 25th of 2025. GEAPS Exchange is the biggest and best show in the grain industry with more than 400 exhibitors and 45 hours of education. It is the best place to find grain handling and processing operation solutions all in one place. GEAPS Exchange brings together industry professionals from across the world to help build professional networks and connect with the products you need. Come walk the trade show floor, take part in live demonstrations, innovation stations, and see new equipment. Make valuable connections through a variety of fun and exciting social events. Early bird pricing ends January 28th. Learn more and register at jeeps.com/exchange. Curious about how the grain industry is getting better every day? Join us as April-Hope Wareham shares how continuous improvement is making operations more efficient, boosting safety, enhancing sustainability, adopting new technologies, and ensuring food quality like never before. Hello, thank you for making the Whole Grain Podcast part of your day. Welcome. My name is Jim Lenz, your host and producer of the show and the Director of Global Education and Training at GEAPS, where the mission of the Grain Elevator and Processing Society is to champion, connect, and serve the global grain industry and our members. At GEAPS, we work to be the global community and thought leader for the grain industry, which feeds and fuels the world. Thanks for listening today and for joining the network of thousands of other grain handling and processing professionals across the globe taking strategic steps to grow professionally. The Whole Grain Show will give you the competitive advantage to win at work so you can make more of an impact. At the time of this episode release, it signifies the 2-year mark when we made the public announcement of the Whole Grain Podcast, a forum for grain industry professionals like you to connect with this educational channel that takes learning on the go. Many of you listen to the show on your drive to work, and some listen while exercising. We're excited to have you no matter what and how you connect with the show, as we're excited to announce that we've drawn listeners from 76 countries in just 2 years of production. We encourage you to share this resource with other grain professionals like you. Be sure to catch up on past Whole Grain Podcast episodes. We also encourage you to hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast app so you're sure to receive the latest episode on your phone as soon as it is released. You can also connect with the show at jeeps.com/whole grain. Here you can see the show notes and the transcript of the show along with the audio player. Now let's get ready to explore how continuous improvement practices are supporting the grain industry. Let's get started. Our guest for today is the Continuous Improvement Grain Lead for 30-plus interior grain terminals along and east of the Mississippi River. April-Hope Wareham has over a decade of barge, bluewater shipping, and rail operations experience. She has also managed food safety for multiple grain facilities. She recently earned her Master's of Science degree in Supply Chain Management with a focus on grain transportation from Michigan State University. April is also the National Executive Secretary for Women in Maritime Operations Membership Association and sits on the International Education Programming Committee for GEAPS. And that's why everyone in the GEAPS organization is so excited to have April-Hope Wareham as a featured guest on the show. Thank you for your participation in Whole Grain.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
You have been so involved with GEAPS. A lot of our members are very aware of you, or if not, the work that you've done to produce a lot of great education for the biggest event in the grain industry called the GEAPS Exchange. So we thank you for that. To allow our listeners to get to know you and to start the show with a bit of positive spirit, could you share with our listeners perhaps a mantra or success quote that you live by professionally?
Yes. So you asked me to come up with this one, and honestly, I'm just going to say the first one that I thought of, even though I thought of a bunch of other ones after that, because it is something that I literally think almost every day. Even though I don't know, I think it might sound a little bit fancy, but it is a Shakespeare quote. It's from Hamlet, which is one of my favorite plays. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. I can say it again a little slower. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. And it's a great quote for me because it reminds me that the world will always surprise you, to be open-minded and to understand that everybody has a different experience, and everything that you see and find can kind of show you something new every day. And it's a quote that I have lived by and have enjoyed literally since like high school or college. And it's one that always pops back into my head. So it's just one that I had to share.
That is a beautiful sentiment. Thank you for sharing that. I feel bad for everybody who's a guest afterwards, because when they listen to your response and you're quoting Shakespeare, oh boy.
See, that's what I was concerned about, but
no one else has ever put together Shakespeare with the grain industry before that I'm aware of, at least that I've encountered.
He was the playwright for the masses. It was just a few hundred years ago. So
yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Now, April, to provide some context for our listeners, could you provide a bit more detail on your journey in the grain industry? I think listeners will find it very interesting.
Yes. So I've been quite a number of places. And I joke that I definitely don't look old enough for everything that I've done and everywhere I've been, but I can promise you I am. So I started with Cargill a little over 10 years ago, and that was kind of where my career officially started. I was studying technical systems management at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. That's in the ag engineering department there, and it's kind of a mix of ag engineering and ag business classes. And in the College of ACES, so a line I represent. I had an associate's degree already, had worked for a couple of years. I thought that what I really wanted to get into was food production, and so that's why I studied TSM. I was only there for 4 semesters, and 2 semesters in, I got the opportunity for a summer internship with Cargill in Pipestone, Minnesota. It was at one of our farm service centers, which is what we called them back at that time. So grain elevator, we also did crop inputs there. So at the time, Cargill still owned our crop inputs business in the United States. And so, our fertilizer, herbicide, pesticide, fungicide, seed. Oh, I think we did a little bit of seed there, if I remember correctly. I might be wrong. I realized that I just really fell in love with this side of the industry. I had always thought that I would be more in the production side, but I ended up being just kind of loving the place in the supply chain that it was closer to the farmer, closer to production, but at the same time, sort of at this entry point to the market where things could kind of go anywhere and be anything, where the grain could go anywhere and be anything. I really, really enjoyed it, had a great time, took every opportunity that I could to learn more about the industry. I didn't grow up in a farming family or a farming background, so just really took a lot of opportunity to learn what I could and got offered a full-time position with Cargill. So I started my traineeship then after finishing at U of I and getting my bachelor's degree. I started at Seneca, Illinois, where we unloaded trucks and loaded barges up on the Illinois River. And we also loaded containers at that time. So I got the opportunity to see kind of a different part of the business as well. Did my traineeship in Seneca, was there for about 9 months, and then got sent to Shullsburg, Wisconsin, where I managed that facility. I was supposed to be there for a few weeks, ended up being there for 8 or 9 months, I think it was. And which, is the way that things sometimes go, and ended up managing that facility for that long. That was also a grain and crop inputs facility. And during the time that I was there was when Cargill divested our crop inputs business. So I was there through that divestiture, and that was another fantastic experience. So here I am, like barely a year out of college and already dealing with a huge plant divestiture and going through that, and really was a great experience for me and really showed what Cargill is and was as a company, because they said, hey, you know what? We believe in you. We believe you can do this. We're going to give you the resources. I was definitely on the phone with lots of people every day asking a lot of questions, and there were some fantastic people who were really helpful during that time. And yeah, so after that divestiture, I kind of had a few different opportunities within Cargill, but chose that the next place I wanted to go was to export, and had some feedback from folks. Robert Taylor, some folks who've been around GEAPS for a while probably know him, and he'd been my manager, or my one-up manager, for a couple of years, and he said, hey, I think you would really, really like the Gulf. And so took a chance, went down to Oswego, Louisiana. I was a production supervisor there for a couple of years, learned stevedoring, which is the ship loading process and ship loading management. That's how it's referred to in the United States. And really, really loved that part of the business. I loved export so much. I wanted to see another part of it. So I got the opportunity to go out to our joint venture, Temco, in Tacoma, Washington. I was out there for a few years, mostly as a stevedore superintendent was what the job role was, but it was also a production supervisor type role. So various different operations management roles. Took a couple months and did a temp assignment and helped out at our Tampa facility. We used to have a facility in Tampa, Florida. We did citrus pulp pellets through there, with very unique for grain elevator experience. And then a few years ago, got asked to step into this role. This continuous improvement lead role is a newly created regional role for interior grain elevators. And so ended up back in this role. And I live now in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I help out 31 plants across 10 states.
Wow. Yep. So that's a great show. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's a long story.
Yeah, it's diverse in such a short period of time. Kind of showcases, number one, your curiosity in general. Two, you aren't afraid to get after things, learn new things, educate yourself, ask questions, inquire, and be open to new opportunities and new perspectives. That is really, really interesting background.
Absolutely. I've had a lot of really great opportunities.
It's so nice. Cargill has supported you and you support Cargill and all the team members there. Now, as we kind of move along here in the conversation, I want to provide some more information about an organization that you are involved with, and that is the Women in Maritime Operations. It's a membership association. You're definitely committed to the organization. You offer support to others. But I bet you get a lot of return from your participation with the organization as well, not just offering to others. But I'm just curious about that. If it's okay with you, I'd love for you to take this Whole Grain podcast platform to share with others the work of Women in Maritime Operations. Tell us about the organization, April, and how it supports others with networking, education, any other resources.
Absolutely. I would love to talk about WIMOS. So WIMOS is short for Women in Maritime Operations. It's an organization that was formed when I was in New Orleans. And so I got to kind of be boots on the ground. I wasn't one of the founding members, but joined pretty soon after, within a few months, and helped kind of start it up. So it's a very specific organization. It is geared toward women who work in maritime operations roles. So that would be women who work for companies that own, operate, charter vessels, or otherwise provide some kind of services on the water, emergency services, engineering, essentially folks who spend time on the water, whether that's at the terminal level or sailing. We also have a number of U.S. Coast Guard members, some Navy as well, some military contractors, and Army Corps of Engineers. So we do offer free membership to active duty military as well, which has been really, really fantastic. So the goal of WIMOS is and has always been to bring women together who work in maritime operations, to educate, engage, and elevate women in maritime operations. And so we are, first and foremost, we're an education organization. We have now chapters all over the country in different places. It's not just a Southern Louisiana thing anymore. We're in the process of getting a Twin Cities chapter started, actually, and we have very active and busy chapters in Houston area, Corpus Christi area, West Kentucky, Pacific Northwest, Ohio River Valley, as well as a number of other chapters elsewhere. So we just hit over 1,000 members worldwide. So we do have a few members outside of the U.S. as well. And we do things everywhere from opportunities for our members to spend time in a simulator, for opportunities for our members to learn more about other parts of the industry. For example, we've done some education sessions on tanker barges for women who work only in bulk, maybe for their whole career, or who have worked only bluewater for most of their career. So, you can learn a little bit about a different part of the industry. And then finally, there's also just this huge benefit in networking. One of the reasons that WIMOS was started, we sort of say, is golf. We found that, there's a lot of things that happen out on the golf course, that a lot of the time women in the industry, and this is something we see in grain as well, right? Just don't get the opportunity to go and do because we haven't ever had the opportunity to learn how to golf. I learned how to golf through WIMOS and now have been at a number of events, whether they're GEAPS events or other maritime specific events all over the country because of all the places I've lived. And that's because of WIMOS. And that's gotten me the opportunity to be in front of people that I wouldn't be able to be in front of as well, to network with people. And that's another really fantastic thing. So we do some of that. We call it like sporting education type things as well as just general networking, which sometimes is really, really important just to see somebody who kind of looks like you and might be experiencing some of the same stuff you have. WMOS has been a huge success. It was really came in at the right time. We've seen a huge change in the industry in the last decade. And I think WMOS is a big part of that. We need it. And we're able to help a lot of people. Fantastic mentorship program as well. So just a lot of really, really cool things coming out of WMOS. We started our first junior chapter at Texas A&M Galveston this year. So just a lot of really great things. I feel like I just talked a lot about WMOS and didn't really take it in any particular direction, but a really, really great organization.
I was just going to ask, I know you said mentorship program for someone maybe newer, but also I was going to inquire about post-secondary education program. So you did mention that's already getting started. So you were one of the early members of the organization. When did the organization start? How?
2017. We just hit to 7 years.
Goodness.
Yep. July of 2017.
If I listened to you correctly, I think you said there's 1,000 people.
Yep. We have 1,000 members. We hit 1,000 members earlier this year. Yeah.
Wow.
So we're just over 1,000.
How'd the organization do that?
A lot of word of mouth. We definitely host recruitment events in the chapter areas where we're trying to grow, but a lot of WMOS membership came through word of mouth. When one woman would join and she, found that, oh my goodness, I had the opportunity to take a golf lesson. And, I paid dues of, at this time, dues are $250 for a year, right? And everything is included once you pay that. So, hey, I paid my dues and I got the opportunity to learn golf. I got the opportunity to learn clay shooting. I got the opportunity to go and do a tour of a really, really cool shipyard near me that I didn't even know existed. I got the opportunity to meet a bunch of other people who I wouldn't have had the chance to meet otherwise. And she spreads that to other women at her company or other women who she works with. And it was a lot of word of mouth for our initial membership, for sure. We have actively taken a focus on recruitment in the past year as well, with trying to host recruitment events at our local chapters that exist, as well as taking a greater focus on what we call our seed chapters or our areas of interest, which is essentially, hey, we've got an area of interest. We've got a few women who are interested and they're willing to start a chapter here. So let's give them the resources that they need and work towards starting a chapter in this area, which is why we've been able to expand so quickly. So a couple of different things, but honestly, the organization really speaks for itself. And it's been, like I said, I've been with the organization since very close to the beginning. I was the national secretary, the first national secretary that we had. And I just started a second term. I guess it was about a year ago now. And that will be my final term because we do 2 terms of 5 years. And so I have been able to see this organization grow from something that was kind of a, small, maybe we had 12, 14 people who were, meeting up to just the powerhouse that it is today that has the opportunity to really touch a lot of lives and bring a lot of people into this industry that we love, right? Because that's really, really important right now. We have a hard time finding workers as it is for these types of industries. And if you can find people who are excited and who are really wanting to break into the industry and they just need a mentor, they're really wanting to break into the industry and they're, debating what should their major be in college. They're looking for a career change. All of that. They're coming out of the military. They're coming out of active duty in the military and looking for, a civilian side job. All these types of things, WMOS has had the opportunity to help people with as well.
That is fantastic. What a wonderful organization. I hope some of the listeners here of this GEAPS Whole Grain podcast listen to it and they may want to be involved, or just as good, maybe they know someone who can lead them there. So that just leads to the next question. Perhaps some of our listeners may be interested to know somebody in being a member of the organization. Who can join Women in Maritime Operations? How do they become a member?
So if a woman's interested in becoming a member, again, have to work for a company that does maritime operations, right? And if you're interested or you think you may or may not qualify as a member or just have questions, you can go to wimos.org, WIMOS.org. And there's a form that you can submit for membership. And there's also a form that you can submit if you know, hey, I'm not going to qualify as a member, but I want to keep up with what Wimos is doing. I want to get the newsletters. I want to get information about upcoming fundraisers and our upcoming golf tournament. I'll put in a plug for that, is coming up in a few weeks in October down in near New Orleans. For those types of things, you can also sign up for that newsletter on our website as well.
Fantastic. All right. That's an important message. Now let's kind of looking forward to our conversation here as well on continuous improvement. Let's start by defining continuous improvement in the grain industry. What does it mean in your role? What are some of the key areas for focus for continuous improvement at grain terminals in particular?
We'll be back after a quick break.
GEAPS Training and Education Program is proud to release Introduction to Grain Operations. This new course is a multimedia version of what was known as GEAPS 500, with dynamic graphics, video examples, photographs, multidimensional illustrations, animations, and interactive exercises. This course is sure to prepare your teams for the work you need them to do. This is a great industry primer at a great price. For a limited time, GEAPS members may purchase the course for just $195. Non-members still save and pay just $295. For more information, visit jeeps.com.
Yeah, so that's a fantastic question. I will say that continuous improvement kind of takes on a different flavor depending on the industry that you're looking at. It's going to look really differently, for example, in a large hospital system than it is in a massive protein plant, which means it's going to look different at a grain elevator. And, so some of the things that we see as this very, very traditional continuous improvement, right? This, constant push for rate progression, constant push for improvement over times, over quality, may not exactly fit puzzle piece into a grain elevator. However, there are a lot of things from that basic continuous improvement and lean methodology that we can use at grain elevators. So the first step that I would talk about is the word Kaizen, which probably a lot of people may or may not have heard, but we use it a lot of the time in the US with regard to having a very specific process change, continuous improvement, discrete event. But the word Kaizen it's a Japanese word. It means good change, and it essentially is the basis and the backbone for a lot of the modern lean methodologies that we use today. It means that change is good and that we want to try new things, essentially. The basis behind Kaizen is a really good one, and it's just listening and understanding and truly understanding the people who do the work and the job that we do. So one of the things that I really think is a huge benefit if you're wanting to start some sort of a continuous improvement or lean methodology at your grain elevators is if you want people in charge of it, bring people who've done the work. And I think that makes a huge difference. And if they're not people who've done the work, but you say, hey, I want this person because they've got a really great perspective. They're kind of an outsider, but man, it seems like they know a lot. Make sure that that's someone who's willing to listen, understand, respect what we've built. The grain industry is literally one of the oldest industries, possibly the oldest industry in the world, right? If we're looking at when people started storing grain 10,000 years ago, we are still doing some of the same things. So there are some things that work. So understand what we built, understand that legacy of grain operations, while also challenging ourselves and leaving room for the new and for leaving room to try new things. Grain, this organization, this industry is always changing. We aren't the same as we were 30 or 50 years ago. And, we're not going to be the same in 50 years from now. There's going to be things that are going to change. There's going to be new technologies that are going to become available. The workforce is changing. The way that we relate to the world is changing. And so I would say there's so much that you can do with a continuous improvement methodology in the grain industry while kind of really respecting that old, but also kind of focusing on the new. One big thing for us over the last few years, and I know that this is the case in Cargill. I also know because I talk to CI folks at other grain companies is that we're really trying to move toward a little bit more of a data-driven focus. For many years, we just we do what we can do, but trying to move toward understanding our mix and blend on a tighter level because that's what our customers want now, right? Trying to understand, hey, what does our cycle time look like? How fast are we able to dump trucks and get farmers out of here so that they can get back to the field and get back to doing what they need to do? The younger generation of farmers, they want that, right? So trying to kind of get a little bit more of a data-driven approach where we can and try and upgrade our systems where we can, while at the same time understanding that, we really need to understand that we're not a business ever that's going to make lots and lots and lots of money. So working with what we have is also a big part of the continuous improvement methodology that I've worked with in grain.
Now, for someone working in the field of continuous improvement or is considering a career in this area, what are some common challenges faced when implementing continuous improvement strategies? Or are there never any challenges?
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, I would not be in this job if there were never any challenges because I would be so bored. But so I think probably one of the big challenges is the financial aspect, right? That's always going to be a challenge in every business that you ever work for, whether you're working at a university or you're working at SpaceX, right? Cost is always going to be a constraint. But in grain, we tend to see that a little bit more, especially just as margins get tighter and as we, kind of keep a closer eye on our pocketbooks, right? So that's always going to be a big challenge is how can we work with what we have? How can we do something in a way that is safe and that is also really efficient, but we're not going to break the bank and we're not going to be doing this huge capital expenditure that maybe we want and need, but don't need as badly. So there's a lot of cost benefit analysis that goes on in this side of the business for that. I would say another big challenge, especially when I was starting in continuous improvement, is that continuous improvement tends to sometimes leave a bad taste in people's mouths. And that's why I talked about it being so, so important to listen and understand and respect what we've built when starting some sort of a lean practice in your business, because grain in particular sometimes has been the recipient of a one size fits all. Hey, we're going to try this lean methodology and we're just going to force it on us. And it doesn't work, right? Because it was designed for a protein plant that's running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, always doing the same thing. Or a crush plant that, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Hey, we have a minimum amount of oil that we need to produce for our customers. And in grain, that's different, right? Continuous improvement literally looks different at different times of the year. During harvest, for example, or during your busier season if you're on the Illinois River, your busier season's a little outside of harvest, for example. But during those busy times, continuous improvement is maybe going to look a little bit more like that. How fast can we get trucks through and do it safely and do it without breaking things? But continuous improvement during other times of the year might look a little bit more like problem solving, or might look a little bit more like trying to use your resources in a bit more of a creative way. I think that's one of the big challenges coming in is that, hey, we've done CI in the past, we've done lean in the past. It doesn't work for grain. End game, I don't want to listen to you. And instead figuring out, okay, hey, there's some gems in this. How do we fit that to grain? And that's been one of the big challenges over the years and has been a lot of fun. We've messed up on a lot of things. We've tried a lot of things and been like, man, you know what? This just is not working. We're going to throw it out the window and try something new. So challenges, but a lot of fun. When you have the opportunity to try new things and throw them out the window if they don't work, that's the best kind of job. So
yeah. Wonderful. Thanks. Now, what opportunities exist for growth and efficiency gains in the grain and maritime sectors?
Oh my gosh. So there is so much. It's such an interesting time to be in food production in general. So like I said, no shame about my age. I was born in 1990. The world population when I was born, 5.3 billion. The world population now, just over 8 billion. That is an insane amount of growth, right? We are experiencing exponential population growth, and somewhere around to 10% of the world's population is experiencing food insecurity right now, which means they are not sure where their next meal is coming from. They're hungry. We have a lot of opportunities to be sort of this, to change that, right? Because we're at kind of the center of the food supply chain. We have this really good opportunity right now to create a more sustainable, more resilient food system. So a lot of what opportunities exist right now, and this is something that Cargill is really focused on, is trying to drive that global food security, nourish the world in a safe, responsible, and sustainable way. So I'll give some example of some things that Cargill is doing to kind of meet these opportunities. So one really cool thing that we've been doing is we have the Regen Connect program that rewards farmers for positive environmental outcomes. So essentially rewards farmers for adopting carbon neutral strategies or regenerative agriculture practices. We also are exploring some really cool opportunities with crops like winter camelina. I got the opportunity to kind of see that at our crush plant in West Fargo a couple of years ago. It's just this tiny, tiny little seed, but very oil-rich seed, and something that can also be planted off-season and can help with soil quality. And we are also doing some experimentation with pennycress, which is another crop that can be grown to, as a decarbonization crop, can improve soil quality, gives farmers a cash crop, and it acts like a cover crop. So that's something that's a little bit newer. I think pennycress has like a 30% oil content or something like that. So again, really great opportunity for renewable fuel. And when I'm talking about oil with regard to camelina or pennycress, that's a great opportunity for renewable fuel. So biodiesel, renewable airline fuel, things like that. So there's a lot of opportunities right now to kind of figure out what are the latest food trends as well. What do our customers want? Our customers who everybody from the family that's sitting down at the table to eat dinner at night to the parent who's, driving as fast as they can to pick up 3 different kids from 3 different practices in the evening and wants a quick meal, to our customers who are producers and who want something safe for their livestock, to our renewable energy customers, and also to our worldwide customers. Cargill's in over 60 countries. We have a lot of different customer needs as well. So in general, just going back to kind of outside of Cargill and just looking at us globally, looking at the supply chain globally, there's a lot of opportunities to serve new customer bases as people's needs change, as people's habits change, and as we develop new trends. So there's definitely a lot that's going on. And I know we're going to talk kind of about innovations and future trends in a little bit, so I won't jump on that too much. I'll focus a little bit more on elevators specifically in the next question. But globally, I think a lot of the opportunities that we have right now as grain elevators is that we just have this really, really cool time in history where we have the opportunity to figure out how can we most efficiently, most sustainably grow the most amount of food, because the world population is exploding and we really, really need it. So.
Wow, fantastic. And there's some incredible initiatives and programs that Cargill has taken on and other organizations as well. So that's really special to hear from you. Now, as a result of this conversation, you may be, I think you are, and it will be inspiring listeners to consider a career in the grain and maritime industries. And maybe there's even folks in college who are listening to this and may want to know more about continuous improvement in that field. What skills and qualifications are essential for a successful career in these fields? What advice do you have for young professionals and those looking to transition into the industry?
So I think one of the first things I would say is, yes, this is for you. Traditionally, this is a career path that a lot of times people don't even know about or don't have the opportunity to pursue unless you have grown up in that industry already. For example, you have a parent who worked in an elevator. You have parents or grandparents who are farmers. What we're seeing is that we need more and more people because this is such an important industry. This is literally the career of the future. You get to feed the world. You get to figure out how to do it in a sustainable way, even if this isn't something that you've heard of before, or this isn't something that you have ever considered before. We need people like that. As the world changes, as we kind of try and do more with less, like I was talking about, as we try and make a difference, and as we try and feed more and more people, we need as many different perspectives as we can find. And so I think that what we really need is somebody who's curious, wants to ask a lot of questions, and interested in pursuing a career in just this really, really unique way. And as you can see with my career personally, it can take you a lot of different places, and you can really get some great opportunities through that.
I also want to jump on a question about working in continuous improvement within the industry. How does their job align with safety and sustainability efforts of an organization?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I would say that the kind of cool thing is if you're working in operations or you're working in continuous improvement, you kind of get to be on the front end of those innovations and future trends. So for example, you would get the opportunity to play around with new safety innovations. Some cool examples would be, I'll give an export example and then I'll give an interior example. So in export, we have a really fantastic team down at our Reserve, Louisiana grain elevator. Heather Brewer is at the forefront of that team, and she worked with a company recently to create a new type of crane, essentially. It's called a spider, colloquially, that can lift the top off of barges without people having to climb all over the barges where we used to and throw heavy chains. So that's just a really cool example of, hey, you get to work with companies to develop a new technology and to hone it in and to work with it and to make it really, really cool. And it is definitely a safety innovation as well. One of the most dangerous things that we do in this industry, and everybody who works in this industry knows, if you work with barges, one of the most dangerous things you do is work on barges. And if you work on rail cars, one of the most dangerous things you do is working with rail cars. So another cool thing that we've gotten the opportunity to play around with in the US are the Greenbrier pneumatically operated rail cars. So it's the hatches on top that are pneumatically operated. They hook up to plant air compressors, and without individuals having to put on their fall protection, climb on top of rail cars to open and close, all you have to do is at the ground level hook up. That same individual who would normally have been on top of the rail car at the ground level hooks up air to the top of the hatch and opens up the hatch. And so we've had the opportunity to work with that company on those as well. It's actually technology that's used and is really prevalent in Australia, for example, but hasn't quite hit the US yet. So if you work, whether it's in operations, whether it's in continuous improvement, you get the opportunity to work with some of those really, really cool front of the line sort of safety innovation that are a lot of fun. That's what I can kind of think of off the top of my head, but I'm sure that there's definitely more.
Wow, that's very exciting. Yeah, you're kind of eliminating that human being from some of those very dangerous jobs, loading grain, unloading grain. That's great that you showcase that, because maybe someone heading into this area may not realize. I mean, the grain industry, they're innovators. And Cargill certainly is, and working and partnering with organizations that are looking to make those improvements in safety as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the idea that like my kids or my family's kids, like if they're working at a grain elevator in the future, they're still going to have a job, right? Because we're not necessarily eliminating people, but they're going to have a much safer job. Their job is going to be in a cab operating a crane as opposed to working on a barge, which can be very dangerous, for example. So I really, really love being able to do that kind of gift to the future.
Likely we have all heard the phrase lifelong learner. I think you emulate that phrase. What value does continuous learning and professional development mean to you?
So yes, I am a very curious person. I would say that for sure. I think one of the best things that you can do is just continue to learn, whether it's professional development and how do I improve as a person? How do I improve as a leader? Or technical education and technical skills, because if you're not constantly wanting to improve on those, then you're going to be stuck in the past pretty darn soon. A lot of what we've been talking about with this whole podcast today and this whole conversation is just how quickly this industry is moving forward right now and how there's so much of a need for it. I think curiosity is one of the best qualities anyone can have. I would much rather have a curious worker than a genius worker, right? I think that that's one of the best things you can do. I am a continuous learner in a lot of ways. I love this industry. I love different aspects of it. Obviously, I'm a big part of the maritime industry as well, just because of the work that I do and what I work on. So grain, maritime, but I'm also currently working on learning Spanish. My colleagues in Mexico would tell you that I'm not very good yet. They're correct. But just always kind of trying to work on new things. I think the more that I learn about the world, the more that I learn that I don't know about the world. And that's a absolutely wonderful thing. So I think that everybody should always be looking for what they can learn next and what they can find out. And it's a absolutely wonderful feeling to know that you will never know close to anything.
That's what curiosity does, or a person who's highly curious. It's a continuous improvement. Hey, that's what we're talking about, personally, professionally. Exactly. And there's a whole bunch of layers to that, whether it's academics from a traditional institution, like you got your master's, or through associations, and you're involved in multiple ones, through networking, learning new languages to better support team members. And that's fantastic. April, we want to thank you for being a member of GEAPS, Grain Elevator and Processing Society, and for your contribution to International Education Program Committee for GEAPS. We know many of individuals listening to today's show are GEAPS members, but we also have many listeners who are not GEAPS members at this time. So before we conclude, I'd love to start a sentence, and I'd like for you to conclude the sentence. Being a GEAPS member means
staying connected to the industry through friends and education.
Wonderful, concise, and it says a whole lot right there. April-Hope, it was a special treat having you on the show to discuss the exciting role of continuous improvement, as well as your perspective on inclusion, advocacy, and career development in the grain and maritime industries. Thank you for serving as a guest on Whole Grain and spending valuable time with the GEAPS Whole Grain podcast listeners.
Thank you. Really appreciate your time as well.
The Whole Grain Show is a production of GEAPS, the Grain Elevator and Processing Society. The Grain Elevator and Processing Society is the largest organization dedicated to advancing the grain handling and processing industry. To learn more about how GEAPS can support you, your career, and your organization, be sure to visit GEAPS.com. That's GEAPS.com. If you are a vendor or supplier of the industry, the Whole Grain Podcast offers a terrific opportunity to spotlight your business. If you are interested in us developing audio ads to support your product or service, or if you and your organization want to sponsor an episode and be a featured guest, please reach out to me, Jim Lenz, Director of Global Education and Training at the Grain Elevator and Processing Society and host and producer of the show. My email is james@geaps.com, JAMES@GEAPS.com. We look forward to connecting with you. Have yourself a great day, and thanks for listening to Whole Grain.